Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Zach on Film. Once again, it is me and Steven Schleicher.
Hello.
Steven, we watched a very great movie last week called Shaft.
Yeah.
And this week we're following it up in some of a similar vein with the movie Hollywood Shuffle, which I had never heard of before.
Yeah, we've talked about it before as one that I think you should really watch. So last week when we were talking about Shaft, Shaft really created this movement of blaxploitation films, or ushered in blaxploitation films. But at the time when you're looking at Shaft, it was a movie that was, hey, a black lead actor, really tough, kind of defining or redefining the role of a macho black man in the 70s. And by the time we hit 1987's Hollywood Shuffle, we run into Robert Townsend, who is trying to send a message saying, yeah, there are the occasional Shaft films, but for the most part, black actors are relegated to pimps and thugs and drug addicts and, just these bit parts, and they're not getting any good roles because Hollywood doesn't want to cast black actors in roles. And so Hollywood Shuffle is a satirical look at one actor's struggle to achieve stardom versus quote unquote selling out. And so that's what this movie looks at.
And in the vein of blaxploitation movies, Hollywood Shuffle is like at the very end of that for the most part, right? Right. So it's already had its kind of going off with Shaft essentially to start it, and then it kind of rocketed up, and then didn't really have a long lifespan, and then really has tuckered out here in the 80s, and it's kind of, this movie is essentially, it feels like, yeah, we're done with that because we're just going to essentially crucify it and don't do it anymore because we're essentially calling out everything what you're doing.
Well, not just that, but everything that's wrong with Hollywood as they're portraying minorities in roles, because even though this one is focusing on black actors and actresses, you see some similarities going on with the Hispanics, the Latino actors that are also trying to get into this movie that Bobby, the character that Robert Townsend plays, trying to get in there, and they're doing the exact same thing. They're relegated to gang members and thugs and whatever, and this isn't right according to Robert Townsend, which of course it's not right. But at the time, when you are looking at the roles that these actors are in, they really aren't that much. You either have the Eddie Murphy types, and of course there's a big segment where everybody wants to have somebody like Eddie Murphy in there, or their background parts.
It's very interesting watching this film from the state of where Hollywood is now.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Because we're definitely still in a vein where this is still very much happening.
Yeah, I didn't get to read the story. Something popped up today about So White Hollywood, I think on Variety in relation to the Oscars. And my big question for you is, compare and contrast Robert Townsend's Hollywood Shuffle of 1987 with what we see in Hollywood today. Has it changed? Is it still the same?
It's hard to say it's changed a lot because the big thing that came to mind while watching this is the big downplaying or outcry of people against a minority playing James Bond. It was Idris Elba was the name was thrown around a lot because Daniel Craig, it wasn't apparently possibly going to come back to play Bond, as they're looking at Idris Elba, and people were like freaking out, like was it the creator or one of the people associated with like the original Bond films were like, no, he's too street to play James Bond. Yeah. And, like that was like this summer that we saw things like that continue to play out. We definitely see it with other minorities as well. Different ethnicities continue to be pigeonholed into things, and there is an interesting pushback against it that's getting a lot of light because of Oscar's So White, and just different programming. It's kind of interesting to see what TV's doing, because they seem to possibly be more ahead of Hollywood on this.
Maybe front, a little bit, sure.
With different programming, not like all across it, but different networks seem to be doing different things. But there's always that thing of like, there's your minority character, like,
right?
That's what they are.
Yeah, your token
that's
character.
what they're there for. And they are going to play very similar roles. I mean, the conversation of the Oscars doesn't even always hinge on it being so white. It's that the only roles black actors even get nominated for is when they're playing a slave or they're playing a butler, or the movie that gets nominated is about slavery.
Right.
Then those are the movies starring black actors that actually get nominated.
Yeah, it's this is a hard movie, I think, to watch from a number of different reasons. Maybe back in the 80s, we looked at this and we didn't maybe see all the controversy with language and everything. But certainly today, in the politically correct environment, the use of language and some of the portrayals are going to have a lot of people really freak out about this movie, especially the Black Acting School's phone number.
I thought the entire movie was probably funnier now because of the state of everything, and we've had so much. It seemed even so much more absurd and critical of Hollywood, 20, 30 years later, that is still so relevant and like so perfect.
What I was going to say is what makes some of the things that may be hard for some people to swallow funny is because Robert Townsend is really, really pushing the boundaries and is really just pushing it to an extreme to where it is so absurd that you're like, why would anyone do that? And then when you look at the segment with Black Acting School, you see that all the Black Acting School is being taught by white guys, right? And it's just this really great commentary on the system. So for those of you that don't know Hollywood Shuffle follows the story of Bobby Taylor, who is auditioning for a role in, Jive Turkey Talker or something like that. Jive Turkey Revenge, something like that. And so he's going through this process, and he's been told that he's this pimp or this thug or this gang leader or whatever. And so we constantly see him trying to be a stereotypical character in that. And of course, his grandmother's not too thrilled about it. He's a struggling actor and he's working at a fast food restaurant. They don't believe in him and they're telling him what's going on and what's wrong. And so this triggers off a bunch of little vignettes of Bobby imagining these kinds of things, of what it's like to, there's one segment where they're riffing on Siskel and Ebert, two white guys reviewing movies. What would be the difference if it were two black brothers, who were reviewing the movies? How would it be different when they're reviewing movies that are predominantly white compared to something that comes from two white guys reviewing movies that are predominantly white? So you get those sketches. And then you have this one that I talk about a lot, which is Black Acting School, where we see Robert Townsend as Bobby Taylor pretending that he's made it in some place. And his grandmother has just given him a lecture on why does he have to talk that way. So we go into this vignette and he's this runaway slave and he stands up and he has this proper British accent and he's going through talking about how Black Acting School teaches you how to be a thug, a pimp, a drug dealer, a hooker, whatever it is. And just all these really horrible stereotypes and everything. And throughout the entire bit, everyone is being taught by white people. And then it ends with this really awful phone number that you can call for more information and to join Black Acting School. But it's just these little vignettes all the way throughout. And as Bobby gets closer to landing this role, he's being called a sellout by other actors who are like, why would you do this? Why would you try to represent your people this way? He's constantly being put down upon by his grandmother, who looks at the Hollywood system for what it is, as BS. And she says it a lot. Then his little brother starts to, imitate him. His little brother really looks up to him and they have a good relationship with one another. But then Bobby is like, what if my little brother sees me acting like this and he starts to imitate that? Is that what I want for my little brother? And then of course he's worried about his girlfriend might dump him because, he's quote unquote selling out. And it culminates with Bobby on set acting through the process, and his family shows up because he has passes to let him on the set. And then he realizes, wait a minute, this isn't what I want. I'd rather go get a legit commercial job and be happy with that than try to get a big sellout job, a big one that is going to not be representative of what my capabilities are or that puts down my race. And so that's kind of the moral of the story that Robert Townsend is trying to get across from this.
Which was great mentioning the moral of the story, because you get partial credits for the film, and then there is a thing that says the moral of the story, and they kind of like dance through it.
Right.
And we can talk about that more later. I thought it was really interesting. But Hollywood Shuffle, set up with this, really, in Bobby's time frame, it's like a day and a half, really. It's not very long.
It's like about a week, something like that, a couple of days.
But it's interspersed with all of these, especially like the little vignette skits.
Yeah.
And it was
some of them go a little long.
Some of it I was not expecting at all. And it was this really great thing where you get, some of them are like maybe 5-8 minutes long.
Some of them are hysterical. Like
they're great.
The film noir detective bit.
Yeah, that was really good.
I think she wanted to do the nasty, and I like the nasty.
Yeah. What was one of his lines? It's like, I didn't want to do it with a stapler up my ass.
It's really, the nice thing about Robert Townsend, and I don't think a lot of people give Robert Townsend enough credit for what he is, because without Robert Townsend, we wouldn't have the Wayans brothers. We wouldn't have Mad TV. We wouldn't have a lot of things that black comedians have been able to do. And Robert Townsend has been around forever doing this stuff. And I really like him. But I don't think he gets enough credit for what he's accomplished. I really think, and I don't know how old he is. He's born in 1957. So 2007.
59.
So he's 59 years old.
Yep.
I have a feeling in a few years we will see the Academy give Robert Townsend a Lifetime Achievement Award because of what he's done to try to take down the barriers in discrimination in Hollywood, and also being a comedic genius. He is really funny. If you've ever seen, I know a lot of people don't think Meteor Man is funny, but I think it's a hysterical look.
What's Meteor Man?
Meteor Man is it's a superhero movie where he's like the first black superhero, where a meteor comes down and strikes, and he gets these powers, and then he has to cope with being a superhero. And Meteor Man came out, I want to say, when that came out, like in 93. So this is before Spider-Man. This is before all this stuff. So at the end of this movie, when he's talking about, you may be the first black superhero, he pretty much is the first black superhero on film, right? So, but it's everything he does is with a tongue-in-cheek comedy behind it. Meteor Man isn't a great movie, but it is exactly what it's supposed to be.
There was a really strong feeling from me of those little skits had to have influenced a lot of what Key and Peele did in there, because it felt like if Key and Peele were really going to do a movie and it was like not something of their own, it was like a Key and Peele, like just an extended version of their show. This is what they would do. They would put like a long storyline, and then there would be these weird vignettes and stuff in there. And even the black acting school thing reminded me of one where they were doing this, there's a Civil War reenactment,
right? And
they come up and they're dressed as slaves. And they come up on these guys dressed up like Confederate actors who are like going full into the character, and they start acting like slaves, and they make them feel horrible, and then they rob them.
Right.
It's great. But it definitely felt like what they were doing is influenced a lot of comedy. And it was just a really interesting film that I wasn't expecting.
And so after watching Shaft, do you get a little bit more perspective on this? And did you then reflect on what's going on today and say, wow, things have barely progressed in 30 years?
That's the horrible thing. Is like you think that we would be able to make changes, and like Hollywood would see trends or see criticisms of how they operate and would try to make changes to reflect that, but very little seems to have been done. Like they will, it's really like they'll highlight like 3 black actors and actresses for like 4 years, and then they'll just switch them out.
Right.
It's like the weird thing. It's like you can only have one really funny black guy in Hollywood, and right now it's Kevin Hart.
Well, and that's why
it's like the worst thing. So there's like so many funny minorities, and like we're only going to do one.
Right, and that's why the whole thing is we want somebody who's more Eddie Murphy like. Right?
Like
everybody's like, oh well, I can pretend to be an Eddie Murphy type, because at the time there's that one star. You're one black star that is doing anything. So it's I just again, watching it 30 years later, and I've probably watched it once in the 90s or something like that, but I remember seeing this on HBO or Cinemax when it was first released at the home cables in like, this would have been 88 or something like that. Just going, wow, is that really what it's like? And then reflecting back going, wow, nothing has really changed from my point of view. I mean, sure, there have been great strides. I mean, we've had black actors win Best Male and Best Female leads in the Oscars, and we've seen a lot more diversity in movies, but we also see a lot of minorities still playing the exact same parts that this film is criticizing Hollywood for 30 years later. Well,
I think an important sequence about diversity comes from Bobby's uncle, who is now a barber, but was at one time an actor and then dropped out because he just like listened to all the people criticize him all the time.
Right.
And he said, Bobby, you could be like the best actor ever. You could be like the first black Superman. You could be all these things. And especially the Superman thing and just listening to him, it's like, that is such a contentious part of film where we have these characters and like, oh, well, they have to be this ethnicity because that's the way they've always been portrayed when there's no real reason why they would have to be.
Right.
And it's the same with like James Bond or like really Superman or Spider-Man, or you're seeing these iconic characters where there's no real reason they have to be white.
Right.
It's just so ingrained in the culture that no one will go in a different direction.
And that is this whole thing of nobody's willing to consider a black James Bond because everyone has only ever seen a white James Bond, and everyone, and really everyone, doesn't like change.
Right.
Right? Everyone is afraid of change for whatever reason. It could be fiscally motivated, it could be racially motivated, it could be morally motivated. I mean, everyone is afraid of change of something because it means, either I have to rethink my worldview, or this may go up against my worldview or my notions or whatever, my belief system, or it may be something that expands your belief system. And I'm willing to try something new if it expands my horizons. You don't have kids yet, but all the time we've got this little kid who's like, yuck, I don't want to eat that. And it's like, you've never ever tried this before.
Yeah.
Try it. No, I'm not going to eat it. And we have a big fight, and it's just like, take one bite. One bite is all you have to take, and if you still don't like, you don't have to eat it.
Yeah.
Takes a bite. Well, how is it? It's okay. Do you want to eat another bite? Oh, fine. Eats another bite. This isn't bad. Can I have some more? And, pretty soon it's his favorite food. And I think that's the problem is people are afraid of things that are different, things that they don't understand, or like I said, things that bump up against their beliefs system, whatever that may be. And that's fine. I mean, everyone, this is not a white guilt thing, or this is not supposed to say that this is only one group of people that feel this. Everyone is afraid of change. But I think if we start to experiment, I think if we take these steps and try a bite every once in a while, try a film that you have not seen, you might find something in there that you like. You might find that, that film, that story, that genre has something that you've never experienced before, and it's worth checking out. And so that's why I think this film is definitely worth checking out, because it does kind of talk about and critique in a very humorous way what is wrong with Hollywood and asking for change or hoping for change by the end of that movie.
Yeah. And I think as watching this as a white guy, it does an interesting job of not putting all of the blame on white people. Like, you're the problem, especially at the very end where like the moral of the story, and then like the writer of the film that's Bobby has been auditioning for and got the part and then quit because how it portrayed his culture. He's like, hey, essentially this is the writer talking like, hey, don't be super mad at me. I only learned about black people from television.
Yeah. Dom Irrera is his name.
Okay, so well, and then that's the problem, I guess, with people writing different ethnics they know nothing about. It's because we learn about other cultures through a filter that's being given to us.
Exactly.
So I don't know really. I mean, even if you look at the news, it's being filtered through.
I was going to say, people. Did you listen to the most recent This American Life?
No.
This week. You really should. I think I deleted it already. But it's looking at the election and looking at how people's filters are really causing problems, depending on, the filter that they're looking for. And they're not saying that one person is right or wrong or anything like that, but they specifically look at these communities, I think in Minnesota or something, where someone has come in with these stories about what Muslims will do if they're allowed into the community. And suddenly the communities are all in an uproar telling the senators and their representatives that you need to put a ban on Muslims coming into our communities. And the senators and representatives are like, we don't have any control of this. Where are you people getting this information? And it's that filter that it's being passed through. You're absolutely right. This movie doesn't just point the finger at white people, although white people are often the butt of the joke in this piece. Towards the end of the film, where Bobby they're filming and he's having these second thoughts about, why am I doing this? And he's seeing what his brother and his grandmother look very disappointed in him and stuff. One of the other actresses is like, you need to get with it. If you are ruining this for the rest of us, this is the parts that we have to take. These are our jobs. And they seem more than willing to be complicit in what's going on because that's how they're making their living. And they're okay with that, to the point where the guy that has been calling Bobby a sellout the entire time for taking this role, the minute that Bobby quits and they're looking for another actor, the guy that's been criticizing him the most is like, oh, I'll take this part right away. And so you're right. This movie isn't just saying this is white people's problem. This is a systemic problem. This is everybody involved in Hollywood has this problem.
Yeah. I just thought it was nice. It was like, it's not giving white people an out necessarily.
No.
It's like, hey, maybe you should take some time and learn about our culture so you're not doing these bad tellings of who we are. But we're going to give you a slight pass because you're only learning about our culture from other white people. So, like, that's fine. But yeah, I did like the idea that Bobby has to not only grapple with how he will allow his culture to be portrayed through him, but are you still willing to allow yourself to be taken advantage of so you can still make money? Because I think that's a place a lot of people find themselves in, not just a matter of race, but just of ideology or just any of your beliefs. You have you put into a position of, am I going to flex on these beliefs and allow them to be taken advantage of, essentially, so I can still like have a job,
right? Or to say that I'm working in this industry. A lot of people, we see this happen a lot. And we see this happen, take race out of the issue, but you see this happen a lot with casting of young actresses. Hey, if you really want to be in this movie, let's go over here and sit on the couch and let me get handsy with you, right? That kind of stuff.
Also comes up in this film.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's what are you willing to do to have this title, this name, this position, and will you be able to move out of that position once this job is complete, or will you be locked into this position for the rest of your life? Which is kind of what has happened in 1987's Hollywood, where black actors are allowed to go up to a certain level, but not higher.
Yeah, it's good to see that play out, and I liked, as much as his fellow actors and actresses criticized him for being that one person that always has to ruin the thing. But there are, two sides to it. It's like people still have to make money.
Still have to make money.
There is always that decision. And I don't necessarily think there is a fine line of when it's wrong and when it's right to allow it to be happening, just so you can actually
there's a lot of that going on, because at the time Bobby is working for Winky Dinky Dog, a hot dog stand, which the owner of the hot dog stand is telling Bobby, hey man, don't worry about acting. Acting's not going to do anything with you. I have raised this business up from the ground floor. So, you have someone that is an entrepreneur who is a minority, who is doing quite well in his area. But then you have everybody kind of turning against each other, where the two workers, one of them, Keenan Ivory Wayans, telling Bobby, hey, your uncle is washed up. He's he's a hairdresser now. And like, that's something bad. Or, that he's a barber. He runs a barbershop. Like, that's something horrible. Or Bobby's grandmother is saying, go get a job at the post office. The post office is always hiring. And everyone's like, oh, that's like awful work. But it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't be putting down people who are happy in their jobs.
Right.
If you're happy being a barber, you're happy being a barber. If you're happy being a construction worker, be a construction worker. But at the same time, it's okay to dream and try to reach beyond that station that you are in. There's a lot of really cool messages I think you can pull out of this movie. And I'm glad this is one of Townsend, if not his first, one of his first movies. He totally financed it on his own. $80,000 of his own credit card money went into this.
Wow.
Plus side, it has a happy ending, made $5 million in the first couple of weekends that it was released, or during its theatrical release, made $5 million. So, he's able to pay those credit cards off. He's able to really kind of jumpstart the careers of a lot of actors, and actually bring back actors that people had seen maybe just on television or hadn't seen in a long while. Back into this movie. So it was really neat to see Keenen Ivory Wayans. I think there were like 2 or 3 of the Wayans brothers show up in this movie. And of course they went on to do phenomenal things.
Yeah.
We saw John Witherspoon in here. We saw Anne Marie Johnson, who we saw Helen Martin, who plays the grandmother. Just some fantastic actors in this movie. Throughout. So I really dug that. But you can tell it's being done on the cheap.
So the whole budget was only $80,000?
That's what it says, $80,000 or $100,000. $80,000 of it was financed on Robert Townsend's credit cards.
No one get paid? It was like,
they probably all did deferments or knew, and this is the other thing too is, are you willing to do a movie just to get paid, to make the money? Or in this case, maybe there's a bigger message that is worth taking this role because there are some recognizable people in here that are willing to do this. And that will give the movie some more cachet and maybe get more people to see it, thus change the message or get the message out there. So yeah, it's one of those things that either people did it for free or maybe got a deferment.
Wow. And I really, and maybe if I go back and look at it a little bit more closely, but as a whole, I don't remember this movie looking super cheap. I mean, it looked like an 80s comedy.
The other thing, too, is you see them called, what is it, the Hollywood Shuffle Players or whatever that they are.
Yeah.
Everybody in this movie, for the most part, plays multiple roles.
Yeah, that was a big deal, which I thought was...
And that keeps your cast down.
Yeah, it keeps the cast down, but I thought it added to the comedy of the whole piece because you have so many people redoing parts for these little tiny vignettes that it added to it kind of added to this whole idea of what was happening and what the critique was of the Hollywood system, which I thought was really nice. It took me a little bit to realize, oh wait, that's actually just the main actor in all of these, and then you could like look at all the individual people, you're like, oh, that's him and that's him, that's him. So yeah, but now that I think about it, everything was really shot outdoors, like during the day, so they didn't have to buy any lights at all. So that helps a lot.
Probably some reflectors and some other things. No, it's done on a nice budget. But again, I don't know what $100,000 in 1987 terms was. Probably $500,000 today or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, now I'm just trying to think what would have really set wise would have cost a lot. Those Weenie Hut hats were pretty dope. Those probably cost a little bit.
$214,000 is what it would be today. So double, a little over double.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's still like a really good accomplishment. I mean, you're talking about they don't have to rent a digital camera. They had to buy film and stuff. Man, that adds up really quick. You get that stuff processed.
Get it done in a take or two, or you have longer takes. Compare Robert Townsend's Hollywood Shuffle done for $100,000 in 1987 dollars. Dope. $7 million is what the budget was on that.
Wow.
So quite a difference.
Quite a difference. But that is, and this movie was helped that it's definitely not very long.
No, it's 78 minutes.
It's pretty tight.
It barely hits the feature mark, which is about 75 minutes in film. So for it to hit 78 minutes, which is probably why the credits lasted.
The credits are so long.
That stretched it out to the 78 minutes. But this is totally not a 90-minute feature or a 120-minute feature. This is let's get it out, let's get the message out, and let's get it out into theaters. Still, I thought a couple of the bits went a little bit too long myself.
Which ones do you think?
I think the At the Movies one was
really?
a little bit too long.
Okay.
And then I thought, the black acting school could have shaved a bit off, but I think it's just, young director, young editor trying to figure out, where do we cut things out? How much do we leave in? But yeah, I think maybe a minute or two could have been shaved off, but then you're pushing it into, it's not even a theatrical release length, right?
Yeah, it was really, I've never watched the Siskel and Schuster and Ebert.
He's dead by the time.
Yeah, I never watched any of those. I know what it is, and I think I've seen images and stuff, but I thought that bit was really funny, especially how much they just slightly changed the names of all the films that they were looking at. And it was nice that we've looked at half of those.
Oh, yeah.
With the Amadeus meets whatever. That one was really funny. And then do you remember what the Indiana Jones
there was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
I don't remember what they called it, though, because it was really funny.
Harrison Chicago
Jones.
Something Detroit.
Yeah, it was funny.
And then the last one was a Dirty Harry ripoff. And
then there was the Night of the Street Pimps.
Yes, that one was
good. Yeah, that one was really good.
But yeah, I think they probably could have dumped the Indiana Jones rip in that one was the worst. Left the other ones there.
Yeah, as far as comedy goes, the Indiana Jones one wasn't as funny as the other three.
Right.
What was the? I'm trying to think of what it was. So the vignette skits were the acting school, the movie critics, the noir detective
one, the Eddie Murphy.
Oh, the Eddie Murphy one, right? Yeah.
And I forget.
And then it was the one where he goes back to the hot dog hut and he's rich and famous. Yeah, I guess all of them, and the smaller ones that don't take as much time, like the Eddie Murphy one and the hot dog hut, are more of a plot advancement than the other ones.
Right.
The other ones are very non sequitur.
Yes.
These kind of advance the whole idea of the plot and then kind of push that whole idea of what Townsend's trying to get across in Hollywood Shuffle forward. So they still work very well, but as far as comedy goes, they're not probably as funny as those other big three ones.
Yeah, I agree.
So what did Townsend go on to do after this?
Well, like I said, he went to do Meteor Man. So he did Hollywood Shuffle. He did a lot of comedy bits. He did the 5 Heartbeats. He was the producer of that. Producer, actor in Meteor Man. He had Townsend Television, which ran, I think, 10 episodes on as a TV series. Let's see if there's anything else that pops out. He did a lot of TV series stuff.
Okay.
Playhouse 22 is a really good one there. Yeah, lots of TV stuff as a producer. And of course, I'd mentioned as actor, writer, director. If we look at just what he did as a director, he did the documentary Eddie Murphy Raw, which was funny.
Oh yeah.
Meteor Man, as I mentioned, Parenthood, the TV series from 96 to 99. He worked on that as the director. Just a lot of small films, it looks like.
When I was listening back to last week's show, you had mentioned, as we were getting ready to talk about Hollywood Shuffle, an episode from the BBC show, the Black Mirror.
Right.
And one of the episodes in the first season talks about a guy who is trying to figure out what you do to get fame.
Right.
And I actually watched that, but I forgot you'd even mentioned it, and then I listened it back.
So Black Mirror is a BBC thing, which is now a Netflix series. But in it, and I forget what the title of the episode was.
It's the second one on season 1.
Yeah. So in this future, you are either thin or you're fat, and you make your money or you make your credits by bicycling all day.
Yeah.
And it's really talking about social media and consumerism and everything. What are people willing to pay for? But one of the questions is, you can get on this Hollywood Idol, American Idol type show if you have 1 million credits and if you're willing to do whatever these people want you to do. and our main character falls in love with this girl and is willing to he's got 15 million credits inherited. He's willing to buy this girl $1 million or $10 million, whatever it costs for her to get her audition. She goes on auditions and they're like, yeah, you're really good, but we have 1 million singers. How about you become a porn star? You'll get, you'll have a life of luxury, but you have to do a porn and you have to do everything we tell you. And the main character thinks that his girl's not going to do it, and she does. And so that drives him crazy enough to where he's going to go and save up the money, get on the show, kill himself. But before he kills himself on the show, he's going to make a commentary about how screwed up society is. He goes on the show, makes his threat, and then the 3 hosts of the show are like, oh yeah, you're really good. How about you do this? How about you do a half hour twice a week where you just rant and threaten to kill yourself so you can get this message out to people on different topics? And he gives into it.
Yeah.
Instead of actually, killing himself, or actually, so it's not the message. It doesn't matter how big your desire is to get your message out. It really is. My interpretation of that was, what are you willing to do to sell out to get that lap of luxury kind of thing?
Yeah, it's kind of almost the reverse of Bobby's situation, where Bobby's like, he understands I will be, the top actor of now if I do this role. And he talks about the entire time, he's like, I'm going to be big. I'm going to be Eddie Murphy. I'm going to be huge. And then he actually gets to the moment where it's time to make that happen. He goes, you know what? This is not what I want to do. And so, but we look at this episode of Black Mirror when this guy goes, I'm like, oh my God, Aubrey, he's going to kill himself. He's going to do this rant. And there's like, oh, are you going to do it? And then I think he's still going to kill himself. And then he didn't. I was like, what in the world? It's like, you took the opposite route. You became, you did the role. Like you did Bobby's role. You
sold out, yeah.
You completely sold out. And it was like, so like, oh my God. It was just, and it was really interesting looking at those 2 episodes, which, I mean, talking like 20 years later after this thing was made, how relevant that idea is of, you think you have your, platitudes in check and you're about ready to take it to the end, but someone can offer you just a little bit of gold, a little bit of glisten, a little bit of fame. Yeah. And people will, take that and kind of go back on what they'd set out to do. So it was interesting that you brought that up, and how the larger themes in that vein of Hollywood Shuffle lined up with that episode from Black Mirror.
Yep.
Yeah. So
anything else?
No, man. I was really impressed with this. Comedies are so interesting to do because, and we've talked about this before. It's like visually they don't do a whole lot that's interesting unless you get to a specific type of director, like Edgar Wright, who does a lot of film technique to enhance humor. And this isn't one of those films. It's pretty straightforward, technical wise. And I thought, the humor. I thought this movie was really funny, which was really nice to watch.
Good.
Yeah, I was. It's one of those movies. Like, how do I never hear about these things?
Right.
I feel so sheltered.
Well, because it came out before you were born.
Well, that's true, but so did a lot of other movies. I'd watched a lot of comedies that came out before I was born, but missed this one. So I'm really glad we had a chance to talk about it this week. So, what are we looking for in the future for Zach on Film?
I think next week. What do you think, Doctor Strange?
Oh, yeah. I forgot that came out.
Yeah, that's coming out this weekend.
Yeah, I totally want to watch Doctor Strange.
We should go see Doctor Strange and talk about it next week on Zach on Film.
Ooh, yeah, I'm really excited. I haven't been excited for a Marvel film for a while, and this one looks like a wackadoo.
I'm definitely seeing this one in 3D.
Oh, yeah. That's probably smart, because it definitely has that weird effect going for
it.
Yeah,
mind-tripping stuff, so...
Yeah. So, man, Marvel. We haven't gone to the theater in just a long age. I haven't been in a long time. I haven't. I actually went. We went and watched The Girl on the Train, which no one should go freaking watch. It's horrible. It's so bad. It's
apparently
garbage.
That woman is writing. I think she's writing the Snow White live adaptation.
The person who wrote that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, is like the book was really good. This movie is garbage.
Okay.
And like that is like weirdly. Is so bad.
It's no Gone Girl.
No, and like it's worth watching to compare how they did so much so well on Gone Girl and how they ruined creepiness.
It's the same group? Is it the same group?
No, it's not. Even the books aren't written by the same author. They're just kind of similar in tone in novel form. Movies is Gone Girl just wipes the floor. But the theater sucked.
Oh, really?
They had the thing, and they had a buzzy wire. I'm not looking.
Hopefully they have their
fixed.
Doctor Strange stuff, because I will call the main corporate HQ and let them know about that.
Yeah. So next week we get to head back to the theater for Zach on Film to watch a little Doctor Strange. In the meantime, everyone should head over to majorspoilers.com, where they can find podcasts like Zach on Film, the Major Spoilers podcast, Top 5 and Critical Hit, and so many more to enjoy your entire week of podcast listening. You can go there and find this podcast posting page and give your thoughts on Hollywood Shuffle or any of the ideas and topics we discussed on this episode as well. We will be sure to check those out. You can click on that Amazon.com link over on the right side of Major Spoilers. It'll take you over to Amazon, where you can do all of your shopping. It's almost holiday season, Steven, so there's going to be a lot of deals on Amazon.
Oh, yeah, you want to get some deals over at Amazon. I think they've started their deals already.
I don't know why they wouldn't.
Plenty of shopping to do. Click that link at majorspoilers.com. A little bit comes back to us. We certainly appreciate it. It allows us to do this thing.
It's such an easy way to help.
Well, there's an even easier way where you don't actually have to buy something. Some people aren't materialistic, where they're like, hey, man, I don't want to have to go out and buy 10 new computers for you just so you guys can get $10. Is there another way that I can support you? And hey, you know what? If you enjoy shows like this, I know somebody tweeted out today that they said, hey, you should check out this show that Major Spoilers does, Zach on Film. It's really good. I think they have some good perspective and everything. If you're someone who loves this show, or if you love any of the shows that we do at the Major Spoilers website, podcast network, or anything like that, you can go to patreon.com/Major Spoilers. That's patreon.com/Major Spoilers. And you can contribute that way. You can give $2, $5. You can give us however much you want per month. It's one of those things where you can just kind of set it and forget it, and know that every time you listen to shows like Zach on Film, you are supporting entertainment. You're supporting the arts. You're supporting a cause, and you're supporting the little guy, right? Even though I need to lose a few pounds, you're still supporting the little guy. And that, I think, is really, really important. And because we don't just like to take your money for nothing, even though we're giving you a lot of these shows for free. Once you become a Patreon member at patreon.com/Major Spoilers, you get access to bonus content, whether it's behind-the-scenes articles, bonus podcasts, little bits and pieces that you may not have heard before, movie commentary stuff. All happens when you become a patron at patreon.com/Major Spoilers.
So next week, we're heading back to the theater to watch Doctor Strange on Zach on Film.
This podcast is copyright 2016 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.